attending the Brave Summit today. This is our third annual event. It gets bigger and bigger every year. We are so glad to see you here fostering mental wellness. The whole event is a result from Flagler Health Plus investing in our community. We are Flagler Health Plus, Care Connect, and the Brave program. We are so glad to see you. You know, I was going to kick off inside the AMP and I didn't get a chance to. I got to kick off in the parent event. But I just want to know, the loudest concert ever in history was with this band called Deep Purple. And it was in England, and I guess at one point they screamed loud enough that it was 17 decibels. 3 people passed out in the crowd. Can you guys get louder than that? Who's excited to be here today? Pitiful. That was just pitiful. Who is excited to be here today? Yeah, that's better. One more time. Who is excited to be here today? That's right. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Miss Francesca Reicherter. She is the founder of Inspiring My Generation. She is an amazing young woman. She wants to share her story with you. We are so glad that you are here. Let's give a warm welcome for Miss Francesca.
Hi, my name is Francesca, and I'm the founder and president of Inspiring My Generation. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you today to talk about mental health because my journey has been a really, really long one. And if someone talked to me about mental health when I was younger, when I was your age, it would have made a huge impact. So my mental health journey started when I was about 5 years old. I was a competitive cheerleader, and back then they put us in those tiny little uniforms, and my belly hung over my skirt, and someone made a mean comment to me. And they were just joking, they thought they were being funny, but they told me that I looked fat in my uniform. Now I didn't know what that meant, but I had seen in a movie that a cheerleader couldn't be fat. So I immediately started questioning my self-worth and telling myself that I didn't fit in, telling myself that I wasn't good enough to be a cheerleader, that I was just my body type didn't fit. So I felt so insecure all the time. I was so afraid of what that meant. And as I got older, I started to continuously question my worth. In middle school, I would have these massive breakdowns. My best friend Sam is here today, and she can tell you, when we were in middle school, if my homework wasn't done by 3:30, I would fall apart. If I didn't get 100% on something, I would fall apart because I thought my worth was tied to how much I could produce. I thought it was tied to how good I was at everything, and when I wasn't perfect, I really couldn't handle it. I just thought that meant I wasn't good enough. I was never going to be good enough. So by the time I was 12 years old, I decided that I needed to talk about it. Anytime I cried, has anyone ever heard someone say to them, "Oh, stop acting like a baby, grow up, big girls don't cry"? Any of those? Build a bridge and get over it? Yeah? Yeah. When I would talk, when I would cry, when I'd fall apart, when I needed someone to validate and support what I was feeling, I heard to just get over it. So I felt like I had to internalize all of it and just hold it all in and suppress it. And it got to that point at 12 years old where I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep not talking about it because I knew something was wrong. I was having these breakdowns, these episodes where I felt super up and confident. I was on top of the world. And then I felt so down and depressed and like I couldn't get out of bed and just questioning everything about myself. So I decided to start this blog called Inspiring My Generation as a way to start the conversation. It started with these little quotes that I would write, kind of describing how I was feeling or what I was going through. And then I started talking about lessons I was learning, things that was happening, that it was okay to make mistakes, that I didn't have to be perfect all the time, that what you say actually matters. What you say to someone, you might think that you're just joking around and being funny, but it hurts sometimes. So I started talking about it and how it was impacting me. And guess what? That was 13 years ago, and no one blogged back then. So because no one blogged back then, I was teased and bullied and made fun of. Has anyone ever been teased for being different? Doing something different? Yeah, that happens, right? And it's hard when you feel like you're not good enough to begin with. When you feel like you don't fit in and then you try to do something and everyone's teasing you and making fun of you, right? I was falling apart, but I was so determined to have this conversation. I was so determined to make my voice heard. So I kept doing it, and when I was 15, I turned it into a podcast. Now that was about 10 years ago. Podcasting wasn't a thing. I know, I was way ahead of my time. But it wasn't a thing back then, so I was teased and bullied even more. And I felt so isolated and alone because every time I tried to talk about it, every time I tried to start a conversation, just needing someone to validate me, needing someone to say that it's okay, that we're gonna get through this together, that you're not alone, I just heard what was wrong with me, why I didn't fit in, why I was being weird, why I was crazy, all these just mean comments and phrases and words people throw around when you're younger. And I really started to fall apart even more. And in the midst of that, my parents separated. And suddenly I felt like my whole life was falling apart. Suddenly I didn't have my childhood home anymore. I didn't have a car to get to and from school. I didn't have all the things that I used to have that made me feel important because I thought my worth was also tied to what I had. How many of you feel like you have to have the newest pair of shoes or the newest phone when it comes out or a new outfit that everyone's wearing on TikTok, right? It kind of makes us feel like we're fitting in. That's how I felt, at least. I thought that what I had made me good enough. And when suddenly I couldn't afford it anymore, when suddenly my life didn't look the way it did, I didn't know how to cope with that because I was so determined to feel like I was good enough. And I was tying my worth to all the wrong things. So my parents separated, and in the midst of a very messy divorce, neither of them had the emotional energy to offer that support system that I really, really needed at the time. But I was so lucky because I had an aunt and uncle and a grandmother and grandfather, Nona and Papa, who really, really stepped up at the time. Nona and Papa would take me everywhere with them. Nona took me to New York for my 16th birthday so I could feel special. My grandfather, Papa, went and bought an iPhone so he could FaceTime me when I went away to college so that I would always have someone to talk to. My aunt and uncle picked me up for family movie nights and game nights, took me to get my nails done, took me to the gym. Just did all these small things small things and big things that they might not have realized how important it was at the time, but those were things that were genuinely keeping me alive, and I'm so forever grateful for that. So I finally get to a point where I'm gonna graduate high school and go to college and things are just gonna get better. At least that's what I thought. I thought when you turn 18, life gets better. You're suddenly an adult, right? Everything gets better. But it didn't because I wasn't coping with anything that I was feeling. I wasn't practicing any self-care. I wasn't doing anything for my mental health, for my own wellness, because I didn't know I needed to. I didn't know who to talk to because when I talked, again, I was invalidated. So I started to fall apart more and more. I went away to college and I decided that I needed to prove I was good enough. I really, really needed to be good enough. So I decided I was going to graduate in 2 years. Someone had done it in 3, I was going to do it in 2. And I was going to work full-time doing it. So I took 4 a.m. shifts at Panera Bread, and I took the closing shifts at Build-A-Bear, which was a lot of fun, by the way. And I worked, and I went to class. And that became my whole life for 2.5 years. I spent so much energy and time just focusing specifically on getting through and thinking, when I graduate, everything's gonna work out. When I graduate, I'm gonna have this big job and I'm gonna make all this money and I'm gonna get away and life's gonna be perfect. But guess what? That's not what happened. So when I'm in college and I'm trying so hard to prove I'm good enough so I could graduate early, I was so lucky my grandfather would FaceTime me, Papa, 3 times a day. Every morning for a cup of coffee before class so that I wouldn't feel alone. I'd start my day with so much love and happiness. Every morning a cup of coffee on FaceTime. Every day after class. He actually retired as a barber. So anyone who was in his chair around 10:30 on Monday or Wednesday or 1:30 on Tuesday or Thursdays, knew that they were going to get a FaceTime and listen to all about my class. Maybe I hated my teacher that day because she gave a pop quiz, or maybe I thought I failed an exam, or maybe I was just tired and didn't want to be there, and they had to hear all about it. No matter what, he answered that phone and made sure that I had space to vent and to talk to someone about what I was going through. And every night for dinner, he FaceTimed me. No matter who he was with, what he was doing, he would pass the phone around so I could see everybody. He would show me the meatballs that he made and just make me feel so important. My grandmother, Nona, would stay up all night on FaceTime with me, listening to me read these finance formulas that I needed to know. They really, really provided that emotional support I needed at the time. Everything in the world to me. And that's why I was able to graduate early, because I had that support system. So 3 weeks before I'm about to graduate and life's gonna work out, right? Everything's gonna suddenly work out and be great. My grandparents get into a car accident and I lose my grandfather. 3 weeks before I'm about to walk the stage, the week of my last ever final exams, my best friend is suddenly not here anymore. I had never taken an exam, a test in my life without calling him first and talking to him and him telling me I was gonna be great and making me feel so comfortable. And suddenly I didn't get a phone call. And I didn't know what had happened yet, but I just didn't get that phone call and he didn't answer the phone and I knew something was wrong. And I felt like my world was falling apart. So when I found out that what had happened, that he had passed, and my grandmother, who was also in the car accident, thankfully survived, Nona, I decided to come home during the week of finals and sleep in a hospital chair next to my grandmother every night. I was very, very lucky that my teachers allowed me to do that and allowed me to still graduate. But I slept in that hospital chair next to her and did everything I could to take care of her. She was my other best friend. It was the three of us always, no matter what. I always knew I had them. So I put all my energy into taking care of her. Have you ever put all your energy into caring for someone else and loving someone else, right? It feels like it's so easy to do because you have so much love in you. But then you notice you're starting to drain because you never made time to ask yourself how you're feeling, never made time to cope. Well, that's what happened to me. Never coped, never grieved, didn't do any self-care, didn't do anything for myself. I barely even slept, I was barely eating. I was just so focused on her recovery, so focused on being there as she learned to walk again, or to help her just sit up, doing all these things. And I just completely fell apart in the midst of it. I lost myself. Christmas rolled around about a month later, and suddenly a holiday where the three of us would lay in bed and watch The Grinch and drink cappuccinos and eat dark chocolate. That was never going to happen again. I was never going to be woken up to a cappuccino and a piece of dark chocolate ever again. And I didn't know how to cope with that. It hit me that that was never going to happen, and I attempted suicide on Christmas Eve. And my uncle was the one who helped me through it, my Uncle Mark. He talked to me about mental health, talked to me about how nutrition plays a role, how exercise, how supplements, how therapy, medications. There were all these different tools out there. There were so many different things that you could try to do. Some may work, some may not work, but we'll figure it out together. We were gonna get through it together. So I ended up going back to school and starting my master's in information systems. And about 2 weeks in, I decided to come home for one of my grandma's doctor appointments. And that weekend, I lost my uncle to suicide, my Uncle Mark, the person who was there for me, the person who I felt like saved my life at that time. And I felt so guilty that I didn't save his. I felt so overwhelmed that how did I not know? Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't I ask? I just started questioning everything and feeling like I was falling apart even more. So I decided, true to my nature, to come home from school and move in with my aunt and younger cousins and do everything I could to take care of them, because I didn't want them to feel alone in it. I didn't want them to feel like they didn't have anybody. So I tried to be there for them. And again, I didn't sleep. I didn't cope. I didn't grieve. I didn't take care of myself at all until I attempted suicide 2 more times and was hospitalized in a psych ward. And I saw how many other people were struggling. How many people, there were 40 people on my floor. 40 people in that psych ward with me, and every single one of us felt isolated and alone. 40 people who either attempted to end their life or were imminent risk of ending their life, and yet we all felt so alone in our experiences. But we probably could have related to each other a lot. So I made a point to learn everyone's name and everyone's story. When we had karaoke nights, I would grab everyone to be my backup dancers and singers. I was not the one who should be singing, by the way. Can't hold a tune for my life. But I wanted to have everyone involved and have everyone singing together, dancing, and not feeling so alone. We started playing board games together and just talking. And I had realized that maybe this is what I meant to do. Maybe Inspiring My Generation, the blog I had started 8 years earlier, was meant to be more than a blog. Maybe it was meant to be a voice for people who had lost theirs, or were just barely hanging on and that no one could hear. So I spent a year in recovery, learning all about myself, going to therapy 4 times a week, and just trying to figure out how to get through and develop resources for myself. And then on March 13th, 2020, in honor of my Uncle Mark on his birthday, I launched Inspiring My Generation as a 501c3 nonprofit and started 3 main initiatives. The first one was called Normalize the Conversation, and that was my podcast. I started asking everyone I knew to come on and have a conversation with me on mental health. Wanted to not just normalize the conversation, but honestly give people tools and information and resources. I mean, how many of you know exactly what to do if you're struggling? How many of you have had those conversations and know all the resources available? It's hard to know because that's often not talked about a lot. At least it wasn't when I was your age. So I decided I needed to do something about it. So I started that podcast, and it's been over 3 years, every Wednesday, an episode coming out. I just recorded an episode. How many of you have seen Victorious? You know that show? Yeah, Trina. I just recorded an episode with Daniela Monet, and it was amazing. How many of you have seen Camp Rock? I recorded an episode with Allison Stoner. I've had so many amazing people on my podcast from all over the world. People in India, people in Nigeria, people in England, Canada, name a country. I've been so lucky to have people come on the podcast and talk about their own lived experience. Or therapists, mental health professionals, coaches, advocates, people who developed organizations or resources. I got to have these conversations with them and learn more about what's available and make those resources and action steps available to others. Then I started an encouragement card program. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, when you're feeling upset, what's one message of encouragement or hope or support or love that would make you feel good? Can you think of one? Does anyone want to share? Someone has to share. What's one message that you wish someone would tell you when you're struggling? I'll share. You're not alone. You're not in this alone. You do not have to go through this alone. I believe in you, and you're going to get through this. So I decided to start taking those messages, writing them into cards, and sending them to the psych ward that I was hospitalized in, so that the people there knew they weren't alone in it. Because if someone gave me that message back then, recovery would have felt a lot less isolating. So we've now donated over 8,000 encouragement cards into psych wards all over the country and are continuing to grow and develop more and bring more hope and encouragement and love to people who need it. And we have students from all over the country making encouragement cards and providing that support. And the third initiative is education. Since starting that organization, I was 20 years old. I'm 24 now, almost 25, and I've published 3 workbooks, and the 4th one is about to come out in May. The first one was called You Are Not Alone, and it's about building coping skills, building the language to be able to talk to someone, to validate them, to support them, to let them know that they're not alone. The next one, I Am, is about learning how to advocate for yourself, learning how to say, I need help, I'm struggling, how to identify what support you want, that you need, what's right for you. Do you need a professional? Do you need a friend? Do you need a parent, a caregiver? What are you looking for? Do you just need some information? And where can you go? Because, I did not know how to ask for help. I did not know what to say or who to say it to. And if someone invalidated me or gaslighted me, there was no way I was going to open up again. So I needed help figuring out what to say and how to say it and who to say it to, and building that confidence in myself to be able to say it again and again until I found the right person to offer me support. So that workbook was meant to just help me learn how to say I need help, and now it's something that helps people all over the world learn how to say I need help. The next one, how are you, is a 30-day check-in, because I sometimes don't have the words to say what I'm feeling. Have you ever just not had the word to describe how you're feeling? You know that feeling? Yeah. So maybe a color or a picture. Maybe there's something that can describe how you're feeling in a different way. And then where did that feeling come from? And what can I do to encourage myself to get through this day? And if we could just do that every day, find that piece of encouragement, we can continue to get through. And then the one coming out in May is self-care. And that's learning how to build a self-care wellness routine that works for you, for your lifestyle, for your budget, for your schedule, how you can put tools together that work for you. And then I've been so blessed to turn these into workshops, to get to do keynotes and presentations and talk to people like you and bring these tools and resources. But I wish I had it younger, because mental health conversations are so incredibly important. If I had a conversation when I was younger, if someone told me about resources, about coping skills, about affirmations, about self-care, about self-love, if I didn't question my worth every single day from the day I was 5 years old, things could have been so different. So I'm going to share with you my 5-step guide to mental health conversations. And I hope that it helps you have a conversation with a loved one or a friend or someone who needs it, so that you both can get the support and help and love that you deserve. So step 1 is checking in with yourself. How often do you guys check in with yourselves? Have you ever asked yourself, how are you? But not just how are you, because how are you has become a greeting, unfortunately, and it's really not. But how are you really? I actually want all of you to close your eyes right now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. How do you feel? Take a deep breath out. Do you notice you're tense anywhere? Are your shoulders up? Are your fists clenched? How are you feeling? Are you tired? Does your stomach hurt? Do you feel energized and excited? Open your eyes. Checking in with yourself is so important, because it helps you know whether or not you're in the space to be there for someone else. Do you have it in you to provide that support for someone? Because sometimes we're just drained, right? Sometimes we just need a lifeboat and we can't take on someone else. And that's why it's important to check in with ourselves first. And if we can't offer someone else the support that they deserve and that they need, that's okay. We can help them find someone else who can give them that support. Because as much as we deserve to feel supported, so do our loved ones. And it's only fair to both of us if we check in with ourselves first. Then, ask non-judgmental, open-ended questions. Like, how are you really? What's been going through your mind lately? If we start questions with, are you okay? People are most likely to say yes or no, right? Because it's a closed-ended question. You can just say yes or no and end it right there. But if you ask, how are you? What's been on your mind lately? It starts the conversation. The next step is actively listening. Looking at people when they're talking to you. Not interrupting them. Showing them that you understand by saying, I hear that you're feeling this way, to make sure they know that you're listening and clarify how they're feeling. The next step is validation. Just letting someone know that it makes sense to feel that way, that it's okay to not be okay, but they're still not alone in it. And the last step is the follow-up. Because sometimes when we open up to people, we question, should I have done that, right? Have you ever felt that way? Should I have opened up to them? What are they thinking? So by following up, we let people know that I was thinking about our conversation the other day, and I'm here if you need to talk again, that it was okay to talk to me, and that you can do it again, and that we'll always have that space. Because again, we all deserve to feel supported. You deserve to feel supported. Those 5 steps have helped me and my friends and my loved ones continue to have conversations, check in with each other, and it saved my life over and over again so many times. Thank you guys for listening.